Thanks for joining today for our 5-minute Bible study. We're going to continue in the book of Colossians. We're going to be in chapter 1, and we're going to be looking at verse 16 today. Again, like always, please go ahead and take your Bibles out, read verses 15 through 20, because we want to get the full context of what's actually happening here. We're going to be in verse 16, but also remember 15 through 20 is an old hymn that Paul is quoting from. He does put his own little 2 cents here and there, but basically it's an old hymn that Paul's quoting from. So go ahead and take a look at 15 through 20 so you get a look at what that hymn looks like. For us today, we're going to look at verse 16. For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. So today we're going to take a look at that verse, and we recognize it starts with the word for. That could be translated because. It's a connecting word that connects us back to the previous thought. If you remember what the previous thought was, it was that Jesus was the firstborn of all creation. So we talked about that yesterday. I don't want to go back into it, but we recognize that it means that he is the most important thing, that he is preeminent, that he is most important. So as we look at that and we remember that, it says because of this. Why is he preeminent? Why is he firstborn? Because he is the creator of the universe. It says, for by him all things were created. So Jesus created all things. It's the same thing we read in the Gospel of John. Now, John's Gospel was written probably a good 20, 25 years after Paul's letter to Colossians, but it's saying the same thing. Here, Paul is saying that Jesus created all things. And John says in his gospel that in the beginning was the Word being Jesus. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So John very clearly says that Jesus was God in the beginning. But then he continues on and he says, and all things were created through him. Apart from him, nothing has been created. So John and Paul are saying the exact same thing, that Jesus is God who created all things. And that would have made a lot of sense to the Jewish people, including Paul and John, because throughout the Old Testament, we're told that there is only one who created, and that's God. And here, these New Testament writers are saying, and that God is Jesus. So we get an idea of what the early Christians believed as they sang this hymn and understood that Jesus was the creator of all things, and therefore he is God. That's why he's first. That's why he's firstborn. That's why he's preeminent. So here we see that not only are all things created by him, but he goes on to explain what all things are. All things are both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible. So in other words, Paul is telling us that all things is included in everything that's on earth and in the heavens, everything that is visible and invisible. Basically, Paul's saying that every single thing, everything. Today we might say quarks and cells, everything that we might not be able to see, dark matter, everything that exists. Jesus made those things. So Paul wants us to understand that all things are created by him. But then he continues on. Since he says visible and invisible, what's invisible? Well, it's the spiritual realm. And he goes on to explain that spiritual realm. He says, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. So these are all demons, angels, living beings within the spiritual realm. Now, some people want to put a hierarchy here, and Paul's not talking about any hierarchy specifically here, but he's just pointing out that everything in the spiritual realm was created by Jesus. So everything physical, everything spiritual, everything we see, everything we can't see, everything that's on this earth, and everything outside of this earth has been created by Jesus. And he continues and concludes this verse by saying, all things have been created through him and for him. So he begins with, by him all things were created. He ends with, all things have been created through him and for him. And what we recognize with that is that that creation that exists is for Christ. It's for Jesus. What's your life for? Jesus. Why do we live? For Jesus. What's all creation about? For Jesus. What's the meaning of life? For Jesus. Everything that exists for Jesus. Because all things have been created for him. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end our 5-minute Bible study. Thanks for joining me today. If you have any questions or thoughts, leave them in the comments. I appreciate that. And by the way, we have gotten a couple of questions in our comments. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and do a Facebook Live next on Saturday and to answer those questions. So be with me on Saturday late morning as we go ahead and answer some of the questions that you guys have asked. Until then, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining. God bless you.